So welcome again to our webinar. We are glad that you are here. So tonight we'll talk about everything we love about budgeting. But first, if you can, in the chat, just write your name on there and tell us where you're joining us from. So tonight, I'm joined by my colleague Vincenza. My name is Jervy. We are the program coordinators for the Empowering Financial Wellness Program. So this webinar series is brought to you by Utah State University Extension in partnership, with the Utah Department of Workforce Services. Today, we're going to talk about all the things that we love about budgeting, what makes it easier for us, what makes it more enjoyable, more convenient for us. Sometimes when we hear the word budgeting, we think about, drudgery. It's another thing I need to do. Stress, it makes me anxious. But today we're going to talk about some of the things that makes it more enjoyable and makes it more fun. So let's start with a quick poll. Let's see here if I can launch my own poll. Okay. Here we go. So just a true or false question. So we have 3. So if you could get on that poll and just, on top of your head, true or false, having a successful budget means having to give up stuff. A good budget has to be strict, and budgets don't have to be super detailed. Are any of those true or false? Just what you think about those things. And we'll talk more about them in a little bit. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so we're split here almost. this is great. This is a good way to discuss these things. Having a successful budget means having to give up stuff. Um, I mean, you give up some, but you don't have to give up the whole thing. There are things that you like. If you were here with us when we talked about the step down principle, we emphasize that, if you want your budget to be successful, you don't have to necessarily scrap out, items in your budget, or, you don't necessarily have to give up every single thing. You just have to take it down a little bit, step down a little bit and see see how you can slash some expenses. So essentially, having a successful budget doesn't have to mean you have to give up stuff. You just have to be in control of how the money is spent and not the money controlling you. So, it has to work that way instead of the other way around. So a good budget has to be strict. Again, we're split here. So technically, it doesn't have to be strict. It has to be realistic, though, and flexible. That's what's going to make it work for you in the long term. That's what's going to make it easier for you to stick to it. It takes about 3 to 4 months of doing something to, make you get used to it, become a lifestyle, become a way of life, and figure out which one works for you. So if you see, say, your budget, you look back and see in 3 or 4 months, you look back, oh, this is the area where I overspend, then make some changes there. Classic example from our team, Vincenza moved from Hawaii to Utah. And now if she would stick to her Hawaii budget when she moved to Utah, it would be a whole different story. So she always tells us, and this is a good example, is you have to look at your circumstances in the moment and work from there. Okay, work towards that goal. And then the third one, budgets don't have to be super detailed. Exactly. True. Very true. If you want it, you can, though. If you want every single penny accounted for, fine. If that makes you super giddy and excited that, oh, that penny went there. Or, if you want all those little categories in your spreadsheet or in your app, great, do it that way. But it doesn't have to be super detailed for it to be successful. You just have to stick with it, make sure it works for you. If it doesn't anymore, then change it up. Okay, so finding what works for you is what's best for you. Because as we always say, personal finance is personal, right? So we're going to talk about the budgeting tips that you can personalize. We're going to talk about rules of thumb and some apps that um, have great frameworks, and then look and see, try them out, look and see what fits your lifestyle, your circumstances, your financial goals. um, Whether you're budgeting, you're saving, you're trying to pay off debt, some of these things will work for you. And like we always say this, personal finance is personal, what works for you, but we'll tell you some of the things that work. And like I used to teach a parenting class, and one kid would, a young parent would ask, so how do you raise children? What's the best way to parent a child? And I'll say, well, there's no one perfect way to raise a child. You can ask your parents and they will probably say the same thing. We all want a parenting manual that comes with each child, but they don't come with it. So we learn along the way. But there are principles, there's theories, there's research based things that's out there, evidence out there that teach us how to do things, and then we customize it, depending on our circumstances or your child's personality or whatever. The same with finances. Like my favorite analogy of all is when you look at a recipe, at the end it always says season to taste. So that's where you customize it based on your circumstances. So we'll start with um this rule. Vincenzo will talk more about this, and I think this is a really interesting way to look at how budgeting can work for you.
Yeah. So talking about, season to taste and tailoring it to meet your needs. Sometimes when you've never budgeted before, which is where I found myself a few years ago, I had never done a budget my whole adult life. And I found myself in a situation where I was basically told that I needed to do a budget because we were trying to get out of debt. And so this is what we would call like a framework for thinking about how to allocate your money every month. Um, this is this 50, 30, 20 is one of those rules of thumb that's out there. It's not the only one. There are variations on the theme. 70, 70, 20, 10, 50, there's 40, 20, there's all different types. This is just one that we wanted to talk about tonight, just to give you a start. So this has also been called a balanced money formula. And it was actually popularized by the Senator Elizabeth Warren and her daughter. They had written a book, and it was called All Your Worth, the Ultimate Lifetime Money Plan. Now, I just want you to keep in mind that this guideline is intended to help you plan your budget. It's not a tracking tool. It's just a way for you to get started to be thinking about, where do I want my money to go? And also, if you've never done a budget and you were to categorize, like look at your spending from a month or 2 or 3 ago, and you start to get a feel for where your money has been going, and it might bring a level of consciousness to you and say, wow, I didn't realize I'm only saving 1%, or I'm not saving anything, or I'm spending, 60% on wants. And so you can always shift these percentages, but if anything, I think it brings a level of awareness of to knowing exactly where your money is going. So I think the most difficult part, the challenging part, is figuring out needs and wants. And we've given some examples, but there are always needs and wants that could be different for different families. So again, it's about doing what works for you, and what might be a want for you might be a need for me, and vice versa. So you have to just plan it out for whatever makes sense for you. Um, so I think it's just a great, simple framework to get you started. Um, it's good to aim for these percentages. Remember, this is a plan for your budget. And if you find that you're not sticking to it, then that's where you look at your budget and you say, okay, maybe I need to shift this, because maybe, or you never realize what percentage of your money is going toward debt, which is what I discovered. I had way more than 20% of my income going to debt, which didn't leave me any money for savings. And as we were making purchases with debt, I never thought to sit down and say, well, okay, when we add this payment to our budget, what is it going to look like? Because the more debt you have, obviously, the closer you're living to that, what I like to call the financial edge. And if something happens in your life, if somebody loses a job, if somebody gets sick, when you live that close to that financial edge and you don't have anything set aside for savings, it puts you in a difficult position. So the moral of the story is that this is a great framework. It's one of many. And if you're somebody that's turned off by like that traditional method of budgeting every line item for every category, you might love this. You might just, it gives you kind of a feel for where stuff is going, but you don't have to be, to the dollar. Which is now Jeremy is going to talk about if you want to do to the dollar and do what's called this type of budget.
Yes, exactly. This zero-based budget, this is my favorite. I love this. I've been doing this for a while now. This is what helped me and my husband save up for a down payment to purchase our first home. Zero-based budget doesn't mean you have nothing at the end of the month. That's not the point. The point is everything you earn that month has been intentionally allocated to your needs and everything you need to pay for and spend money towards. That includes, okay, when we talk about expenses here, it doesn't just cover the things you pay for, like your mortgage or rent if you're renting, or your groceries. That's just some of the expenses that we're talking about here. We're going to talk about, we're thinking about the savings. Okay, you have to include that in your zero-based budget so that every dollar you earn has a job. Okay, you have to plan and purpose and it has to have a purpose. That's why I like the word intentional, because you intentionally tell the money, okay, this is where you go. This is what your job is. If you visited our Instagram page, the other day I talked about, like I said, how my husband and I were able to save for a down payment for our first home. And what we did was even though we worked, both of us were employed and we had paid employment, but for both of us, we only lived on one paycheck, my paycheck. And the rest, what he was earning, that was being saved for the down payment, because we couldn't borrow from anybody else. Nobody could, co-sign with us. No one. We can't live, we can't save by, forgoing rent for a year or two by living with family members in somebody's basement or whatever. We didn't have those options. So the only option was, what we have. So that was the plan, and we still do that to this point in our life. We've been married 13 years now, and we still do this. Every piece of income that we have, every dollar, we make sure it has a job. And we still live off one income, one person's total income, which is great, because the thing is with these frameworks, like Vincenzo said, sometimes you can put them together. Use a create a zero-based budget based on that framework. You can do that. That's what we love about all these frameworks. You can customize it depending on what you need and what you're trying to achieve financially. But this is this zero-based budget. It's my favorite. And if you take our PowerPay Money Master online course, we talk about this in one of our modules. So check that out, powerpay.org. If you live in Utah, we have we can waive that fee waiver. We have a fee waiver for you that you can apply for. So check that out. And we talk more about zero-based budgeting in our courses, in that module in our course. Another way to do this is the cash envelope system. You probably heard about it. Vincenzo is going to talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah, so when I was first starting to budget, I was also trying to dig ourselves out of debt. And so some of the categories that I found that I had a weakness for was going out to eat and clothing. So I had learned about this envelope system. And so basically what it is you use actual cash for discretionary spending. So not like your fixed expenses, like your rent and utilities, but things that, could vary from month to month, and you can decide how much you want to spend on them. When I was getting out of debt, that going out to eat envelope was very thin because it was one of the things that wasn't going to be our priority. If I could put an extra $50 toward debt, I was committed to paying down debt. But it really helped me stay on track. So if I did go shopping for clothing, I would just take my clothing envelope with me to the store. And when that money ran out, then I didn't have any more money for the rest of the month. But at least I had permission to spend that money that month without going over, what, because we were also doing a zero-based budget. So a lot of these things you can do in combination, like Jeremy was saying. And so what also it helps you do is you typically, you're not gonna, it's gonna help you not go over any of those budget limits that you set for yourself, or rather I like to call them spending limits. So, but using this method requires you to leave that credit card at home or that debit card, which I was actually living overseas at the time. So that wasn't so hard because I lived in a country that was very cash based. It was just tricky to keep track of euro versus dollars. Sometimes I would shop, where I could use dollars, and sometimes, but the bottom line is it really helped me stay on track for those variable expenses like eating out, groceries, etc. So budgeting is one part of the picture. Like I said, the planning the budget, where the money's going to go. And then the other side of the equation is you have to track that spending, because if you're not tracking it, really the budget is not helpful to you. So we're going to talk about now some different apps that are out there. This does not include all of them. There are dozens, maybe even hundreds of different apps out there, but we just thought we'd highlight a few just to give you a feel for what's out there right now.
Yeah,
So Jeremy's going to talk you through some of them.
yeah, exactly. I mean, there's, like Vincenzo said, there's a lot out there, and some people don't like them. Some people just still, they stick with the, pen and paper or a spreadsheet, an Excel sheet or whatever. But we give credit to what some of these apps can do. It makes it more convenient for you. It automates some of the things for you. But we're going to talk about five budgeting trackers that we want to call them. We're going to talk about PowerPay, Every Dollar, Mint, Good Budget, and Nanci. But first, let's talk about PowerPay. So if you haven't heard of PowerPay at this point, if you've attended some of our webinars before, we talk about PowerPay a lot. It's actually it's a debt elimination tool is what it's famous for. But not some people might know this, but if you don't, now you know, because we're telling you that it doesn't just help you create a plan to eliminate debt. It also helps you create a spending plan so that you can conquer your debt. Because part of paying off your debt is to be more intentional about your spending. So if I'm gonna open the app in a little bit, but what it does is it has a basic spending plan and an extended spending plan. But for both, it will tell you, okay, especially the basic one, a percentage of your take-home pay spent in each category is compared to a range suggested by financial educators. And this comparison can provide a starting point for you where you can, maybe trim down some of that spending and, free up some money to go towards debt. So let me just show you that website real quick. So can everybody see this, right? So this is the website. Let's go to powerpay.org, and here you'll see a spending plan. Okay, you click on that, there's basic, there's extended. So I'll just show you the basic, and it wants me to log in. Give me just 1 second. While it's loading, like I said earlier, it will show you, okay, if what you're spending on a certain category, if it's within the range that's recommended by financial professionals, financial educators. So for example, here, okay, say both of you work your take-home pay, which is everything taken out of it already. This is what gets direct deposited to your account. This is what your paycheck is, paycheck amount is equal to. So less taxes, that's everything, all of your deductions. Say your take-home pay for the month is $2,500. Your partner maybe works and takes home the same amount. So you have $5,000 to spend for the month. That's your take-home pay. So this area over here, suggested percentage of income. Housing, including your utilities and supplies. So not just your rent or your mortgage, but your your water bill, your electricity, water, sewer, trash, all those things, and whatever else that goes into your housing, insurance probably, those kinds of things, has to be within 33 to 35% of your income. So for example, if your rent is say 1,300, for a, I don't know, one bedroom apartment, if you live in Utah, that sounds about right. Right? It's even just depending on where you live. So let's say 1,300, and then for everything else, additional 300, let's say 1,600 is what you pay for. That's already 32%. So you're still within range. But if you find yourself spending $2,000 on on housing expenses, that's above range, right? So now you can look at, okay, how do I cut down that expense? Maybe save on utility, or maybe it's time to move to a new place kind of idea. Okay, so let's go back to 1,600. And then your budget for food, I read somewhere that say for a couple, you start with $300 and then you add $100 for each member of the family. Depending on where you live, that might vary, especially with cost of living varying from state to state or country to country. But let's say you're a couple and you have $300 for food. Well, that's great. 600, I mean, not 600, 6%. So you're great there. So transportation, maybe each of you have a car, both of you commute, you put gas in your car, $50 worth of full tank twice a month. I think that's pretty conservative. So both of you, that's what, 200? Okay, you're still within range there. That's 4%. And then you go, you buy new clothes for the season. You need a sweater this season because it's winter or it's summer, and you need a new wardrobe, whatever. Every month, say we put $200 for new clothing. That's still 4%. So you're okay there. And here are some other expense categories that you can fill out, and it will tell you in the end here at the bottom, okay, that your recommended total necessary living expenses should be about 75% of your monthly income. You're at this point, without any of these, you're already at 46%. So you see here, all of these categories, except for credit obligations, such as, maybe you're paying off your car or student loan or whatever. Um, that's a little bit higher, but everything else here, it gets littler and littler, making sure that, maybe these are not the things that should be on the priority, but it's good to have, but here, dental, of course, medical, prescriptions, health insurance, of course, you got to pay for those. But say recreation, you start at 2%. Maybe those are like what we talk about, discretionary spending, right? Because then you could see maybe we shouldn't spend too much on that. But there is a range here, which is why we like it very much, because it tells you, okay, this is the threshold. If you're spending more than this much, then you might want to rethink how much you're spending on that category. And then for the extended spending plan, this is what it looks like. Okay, it includes your savings, a retirement fund, anything you want to save for, investment, maybe.
I like how it puts it first in this one.
Yes, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
It's a really good key. Thanks for bringing that up. But we'll emphasize that. And remember, earlier I told you too, when you think about your budget, you have to be intentional about saving. Include that in your spending plan. And then housing, here it's more detailed, is what it's gonna show you. There's this personal one. It even has, your mani-pedi, your haircut, things that's fun to have just for yourself. We'll talk about that too in a little bit.
And I think when you're first starting out, at least in my experience, when I first started out with budgeting, I didn't really know what I was spending in those categories. So I wanted to have a line item for everything, because then it gave me an opportunity to go back and say, what have I spent? Because I didn't really have a clue. I mean, I knew what my fixed bills were, like our rent and utilities, but there were some things I just really had no clue. So it might be something to think about when you're first starting out with budgeting, is maybe to get a little more detailed, just to kind of see, because we are creatures of habit. Most of our spending is habitual. And so you'll start to see a pattern if you look at your bank statements and credit card statements, etc.
Okay, here's a couple more, and Vincenzo will talk about them. I'm sure you've heard about Mint.
Mint was actually acquired by Intuit, which probably most of you know, the makers of TurboTax. I've been seeing these commercials. I guess it's, of course, it's tax season. Been some pretty funny commercials about the free TurboTax. Anyway, so their whole premise is it's designed to help you save more money and spend less. What we like about it, if you're comfortable with it, this tool will actually sync with all of your accounts, your credit cards, your banks, your bank accounts, your savings accounts, your retirement accounts, your college savings. As long as your bank allows it. I know I have one savings account. It's not a brick and mortar account. It's with an online, and they don't allow Mint to pull in any information. They're super locked down. Even though Mint has two-factor authentication, some institutions just don't want to give you access. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, what I like about it, it allows multiple devices to access it. So for example, if you share, if your finances are combined in a household, like in my household, my husband and I share the accounts. So he's able to pull up the information from his smartphone, and I am as well. So if he wanted to add in a cash transaction, he could do that if he went and spent money and enters the receipt if he didn't use, our bank accounts or debit card. And then we both have visibility to that. And I also like that you can log in on a computer if you don't want to look at a small smartphone. For me, I call it small because it's hard for me to read. So I do like the fact that I can look at it on a big screen and access the same information. And in addition to bill pay and tracking, it'll even, if you wanted to connect to like your mortgage payment, your whatever bills you have, it'll send you reminders of when those bills are due if you wanted to. In addition to the bill pay and the expense tracking, it also offers you a free credit score. I know a lot of banks and credit cards offer that. It's just another opportunity for you to have a look at it. And if you want help improving your score, Mint will even give you some insight on how to get where you want to be, like what you did or what you could be doing. Like it'll say, oh, your score went up 10%, or excuse me, 10 points. Here's why. Here are the good things that you did in the last 30 or 60 days that improved your score. But just keep in mind that the credit score that Mint offers you, it's a FICO score, but it's not a standard FICO score like maybe that a bank would pull or a creditor. It's based on a specific model that was developed by Equifax. So Equifax is one of the 3 major credit reporting agencies. And so the information that they would provide you would come from your Equifax credit report, and that's the number that it would provide for you. And so if you've ever heard of other ways that you can get like free credit score, Credit Sesame, TransUnion, they also rely on specific calculation models, but one is Credit Sesame is tied to Experian, and then Credit Karma is tied to TransUnion. So we've talked about credit scores if you've joined us for other classes, but I just wanted to mention that the score that this one provides is actually from your Equifax credit profile. So we have some people love it, some people hate it. Personally, I love it. And Jeremy's like, I've tried it, it doesn't work for me. So again, it's about what works for you, because if it works for you, you're going to stick to it, right? If it doesn't work for you, you're going to feel frustrated and you're going to say, I don't like this, or I'm not comfortable with it, having access to my accounts, et cetera. So again, it's just putting out there what's available to you, and try different ones and see what works for you. Jeremy's going to talk about another one that we wanted to talk about, which is Good Budget. You're muted.
I know. It happens to me every single time. What is wrong with me? But Good Budget is good. Okay, so we've looked at this. Some of us use these apps. Some of us, looked at it and said, okay, this has good things about it that's gonna help people, feel good about budgeting, makes it more convenient for them. So Good Budget is one of those things. It's based on the envelope system. So if you've already done the envelope system before, this is exactly it without the envelopes. So it's another free app for the basic account. but if you want to pay for, other services, other features within this app, I think it's like $5 a month if I'm not mistaken, but you have to pay a premium. um yeah, Mint is free. This one is the basic is free, but oops, sorry. The basic is free, but if you want more features and access to other functionality, you have to pay a monthly fee. I think it's $5 is what I when I looked it up. So what it does is, you create your own categories, very similar to, how you create your own categories when you have those envelopes. You create your own categories, and then you track your spending. This does not sync with your bank, which is, I think, some people like it because of, security purposes. I don't want this app to have, access to my bank account, for security reasons. Some people like that feature, some people don't, because they like the automation. But if you're that kind of person who doesn't like the idea of all your bank accounts in all those financial information in one place, it it freaks you out, then this is a good app for you. So it doesn't sync with your bank accounts. You manually put the transactions as well, so it has that intentionality a little bit built into it, where you still feel like you're part of the process without it being too demanding of your time, so to speak. So like Mint, it also allows for multiple users, and multiple interfaces. And then your family members can share the budget with you. You can share it with them. So the thing that makes this unique really is it doesn't sync with your bank, and you have to manually put in those transactions for you. Very similar to how you'd work, how you'd use an envelope system, just on an app without the envelopes. So another thing is every dollar, and Vincenza's gonna talk about it. I think she's gonna talk about two more, which I think are really good apps as well.
So EveryDollar is another one of those free apps if you have the basic tool, and it is based on the zero budgeting system. So you put in what your income is, like as you can see in this screenshot, you put in what your paychecks are. So in this example, you've got 5,000, and you've got to start spending that 5,000 on paper. It doesn't necessarily mean you've physically spent it, but the budget wants you to give every single dollar a job. And for the basic one, when you do the basic plan where you have to enter everything manually, it does give you a level of intentionality and really keeping your eyes on it. Especially when I was getting out of debt, I was looking at that budget every single day. And every time a paycheck came in, I made sure that, it was going where it was supposed to go. Um, after you've been doing budgeting for a while, like I have, and as I've dug myself out of debt, you start to relax a little bit in terms of don't have to be so precise, but I still do a budget. And what I love about it is just that sense of it's freeing in a way. It gives me that financial peace, and I don't have that level of anxiety. Um, and so that's what I love about. Personally, I like to have some automation to it, but honestly, when I was first starting to budget, I didn't even use apps. I did the paper and pencil, which I still do. I do a budget on an app, and I also do it on paper, just in case, because I can scribble notes on a piece of paper, right? I can't necessarily scribble notes on an app, but also just in case technology fails or something, I can't get access, I have it on a piece of paper. So the EveryDollar is free for the basic. If you want a more streamlined experience and you want to have it connected to your accounts, it's called EveryDollar Plus. And the cheapest way to do it is to pay $130 upfront for the year. And if you want to commit to like 3 months or 6 months, it's a little bit more per month, but you're not tied into the year. And also this one does give you a free 14-day trial. Most of the apps that I've seen out there do give you a free trial, especially if they offer you an upgrade. But I think I put it in the chat. Mint is free, whether you connect accounts to it or not. I'm cheap. That's why I liked it. Especially when I started, I was like trying to not spend any money. And so that worked for me. But again, this is just another variation on the theme. Lots of different, all of them have pros and cons, and what the pros and cons are might be different for each and every one of us, right? So this is another one that we've done some research with. It's called Every Dollar. Another app that is kind of new to the let's say the app world. It's called Nanci. It's pretty simple and straightforward. It has a lot of the features of what the other ones that we're talking about. It's called, they tout it as it's your financial friend, and it's actually targeted to be a simple budget to empower women. Most women in the households, if there's usually it's the woman that handles all of, like in my household, I'm the one that pretty much handled all of the money. Even when I wasn't working, my husband was working, but pretty much the women typically tend to make the financial decisions in the house. Not always, depends. But so I think this was kind of geared toward focusing on women and, helping it stay simple. So if you sign up, it is free for the basic tool. And if you want to sign up for the premium plan, which is connecting your bank accounts, and then it'll automatically download those transactions for you, just like the other ones. When you pay for that premium, it'll automatically download every time you swipe your debit card or use a credit card. If you connect those accounts, it'll download those transactions and it will categorize them. So it's really important that when you do have your apps automating and pulling information from your accounts, as I learned, double check and see how those expenses are allocated. Because, for example, I like Mint, but Mint also has bugs in it, which I'm sure some of the other ones do. Sometimes it would categorize something into for example, Amazon, it just would throw it into shopping. Well, that's not specific enough for me. Like, was it groceries? Was it clothing? Was it, electronics, whatever. So you just have to make sure you go in there and look at it. And it's pretty simple. And then you can split transactions a lot of times. You did a shopping trip. Not everybody likes to split transactions, but you can go in there and say, hey, I went to Walmart, but some of it was groceries and some of it was household items. So most of these apps give you the opportunity to split transactions. And, the more you do it, the better you get at it. It was a learning curve for me, for sure. But once you start using something, so try different ones, see what works for you. A lot of them, they're free trials, and try one month, see how that works. Maybe try one another month and see if you like that better. And maybe you don't like apps. Maybe you're just, old school and you like to just keep an Excel spreadsheet or on a piece of paper. But, again, finding something that works for you, you're going to be more likely to stick to it. We want to know where our money went, right? Not wondering where it went, but knowing exactly where it went. And that's, I think, what budgeting has done for me. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we told them about the idea of, okay, you can pick whichever app you want, or I'm a pen and paper person. I still have, I do it. I like the feeling of being in control and doing it myself. And these apps make it more convenient for most people. I like Vincenzo said, I didn't enjoy Mint, but the one I do for myself, it's on an Excel sheet and it's on a Google sheet, and my husband and I share it. It works for us. That's part of personal finance being personal, And like we mentioned earlier, these apps are out there for you to, navigate them, explore them. You can commit to one if it works for you. If it doesn't, there's a lot out there. So we're not one to say, okay, this is the best, get this, stick with it. It will save your life. We're not going to do that for you, because we want you to make that choice for yourself. Go ahead and explore those apps. And if you find that it works for you, then go run with it. But here's the principle we want to leave with you before we end this webinar tonight. And I think we touched on this a little bit earlier. When you're creating those spending plans, okay, we like to call budgets now as spending plans, because because money's for spending. So let's spend them, but let's spend them intentionally and with more purpose. Pay yourself first, whether it's in a form of a saving, if you're saving for something or you want to save for retirement, make investments. It's all the rage right now with what's everything's going on. And Kirsty Lynn on our Instagram page, she had a lot of good advice there about investing. So if you haven't joined and followed us yet, go follow us at Utah Money Moms, and she talked about investing. But going back to what I was saying, pay yourself first, whether it's in the form of saving or setting aside a personal allowance. In terms of saving, you have to make sure, treat it as a bill that you pay first. Okay, pay that category. It's just called savings, but it's one of your other categories too. You put a certain percentage of your income or a certain amount, whichever works for you. You do that first thing. You can automate it, direct deposit it. Amanda has talked about a 1% fund on the blog, and she talked about that in other platforms too. But that's great because you don't even feel it. It just happens and it's growing. And when it's time for you to use that savings, it's there. It's your cushion. It's a nest egg, so to speak. And you create your budget around that. Okay, I've already set that aside. I won't touch that, and this is what's left, and this is what I'm going to spend for every other category. Okay, not in the expense of paying your mortgage or whatever, or cutting short your trimming your grocery budget too much, but just create that that budget around saving first, as opposed to, which is a common pitfall, you pay everything else and then you say, well, whatever's left, it's going to go to savings. Well, guess what if there's nothing left? Then you had nothing to save. So turn it around. Savings first. You can automate it, do whatever you want, set a certain percentage of your income or a certain dollar amount, whichever works for you. But the bottom line is, the moral of the story is, prioritize savings. So pay yourself first. Okay. And the other thing is setting aside a personal allowance. We talked about this earlier in that spending plan that I showed you, but Vincenza, talk about that a little bit more.
Look, I forgot to unmute myself. Okay. Personal allowance, my favorite line item in my budget. So just like I give my kid allowance, my husband and I get an allowance every month. So it's something that, instead of creating like a miscellaneous, I'm a little bit detail oriented, so it's not my favorite thing. We actually created a personal allowance or pocket money, and we each get a certain amount set aside every month. We actually have a his personal allowance and a hers personal allowance. And when we were first struggling getting out of debt, we didn't even have any. And then we added a little bit. And as we got better at this money thing, we were able to increase it, without having, again, this is not a need. It's, well, sometimes I would say it's a need, but it's actually, it was a want. It was something that if it didn't happen, if we didn't have the money for it, it was okay. I could live without that money. But so if you've never done an allowance, it gives you that sense of permission to do a little something to treat yourself. Especially when I was getting out of debt, I needed to have those little celebrations and those little things that I could do that gave me the incentive and encouragement to keep going. Because sometimes it got hard, and sometimes I felt like I was on a diet, or I was being restricted. I always thought budget was a bad word. I didn't like it. And so having that little personal allowance, just like my little treat that I get to spend, and without any guilt. For me, a budget is a contract with my husband, and we are dedicated to sticking to that contract as much as we can. And I'll tell you one thing, once we had that contract and that budget, guess one thing we don't fight about anymore. We don't fight about money, because it's something that we talk about every month. And now that we've been doing it for so long, it's just like clockwork, and things come up. Yeah. Unexpected things or things that change. But for me, having that personal allowance really gave me some freedom. And the best part for me, this is something you don't have to do, but I like, if I don't spend all of my personal allowance in 1 month, let's say I have $25 and I didn't have a chance to spend it that much. Guess what? I have given myself permission to roll it over to the next month. Okay, now I have $50. So if I'm trying to save towards something that's a little bit more than that, I can just kind of save that for a few months and then make that purchase. And, I've done that before. So that's something that your choice to do that. I love doing that just because I like to kind of hoard it up a little bit and then be able to buy something nice for myself, or treat myself to something. So the whole point is that you're in control, and you get to decide. But I just, for me personally, especially when I was getting out of debt, this was like my saving grace. This is what kept me going. Um, well, yeah, pay yourself first. Super important. Don't make it an afterthought. Make it a priority. Even if it's $5, you know, you have to be able to set aside something every month.
Yeah, and when I think about that too, is sometimes you gotta, celebrate those small victories, and take that out of your personal allowance. So I just paid off like half of that debt. Let's go celebrate. Maybe grab some, I don't know, ice cream or whatever. And you don't have to take it out from your grocery budget. You can take it out of your personal allowance. So yeah, I really like that idea of, pay yourself first. It keeps you motivated. It keeps you, like Vincenza said, it keeps you going. So we have a couple of questions in the chat, which are great. One of them being is, can you still can you pay can you be paying debt while saving, or can you still be saving and, you know, pay off debt? We showed you PowerPay. We showed you PowerPay earlier. PowerPay, like I said, like we mentioned, it's a debt elimination tool. But the way it works is it allows you to create a debt elimination plan where you could create a category called emergency savings fund and see. Still, okay, here you're paying off debt. Some of them you're just paying minimum, you're doing minimum payments. But because of how PowerPay works, you can actually still, start building an emergency savings fund while still paying off your debt. And it still will, cut the length of time you'll be paying off your debt, and drastically. It might maybe cut maybe 3 or 4 years depending on interest rates and things, depending on how many debts you have. But if you're interested, we do have a webinar coming up. It's a 1 hour long meeting and more in-depth, and we're just going to talk about PowerPay.
We call it our master class.
Yeah, it's a master class. It's on the 25th. Am I remembering it right?
Yes, if that's a Thursday, yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
The
Thursday the
25th.
25th.
I'll put the link for
yes.
the registration in the chat.
Yeah, we'll put the registration link on the chat, and come to that webinar.
It's free, also free.
It's free like this one, but we'll talk about just PowerPay, and we'll talk about things like that. So we are happy that you are here. We're glad that you're able to come out tonight and have this discussion with us. Just before you leave, if you could please, would love to know your feedback. Of course, this presentation and these webinars are grant funded, and we would like to know how we're doing. We'd like to report and share with our partners what you're learning and what your plans are as a result of attending these webinars. This is the link to the survey. If you've done a survey for us before, because you've taken another, if you've attended a different webinar, please still fill out this survey for this particular webinar, since our content is different. So, and you can also scan this QR code. It will take you to that same survey. And just real quick, I just wanted to ask everybody if we had like a master class like that one we're having on the 25th. Would you be interested in attending one like that with different topics? We'll cover budgeting, managing debt, like we'll do on the 25th with a PowerPay masterclass, understanding credit, and getting financially organized. Just indicate in this poll if you'll be interested in doing that, and if there's a particular financial topic that you'd be most interested in. That would be great information for us as we prepare all these resources for you. Thank you so much for attending tonight. We really appreciate you coming. We see some names, familiar names. They've attended some of our webinars before. This is great. We love having you come back over and over again for new content. Follow us on the blog, utahmoneymoms.com, and follow or like us. Follow and like us on our social media platforms. We're on Facebook, like our page, Utah Money Moms. Instagram, we have lots of good things going for you over there. We're also on YouTube and on Twitter. And if you want to share all these information with all of your friends, invite them to the webinar, send them to this website, finance.usu.edu/EFW. We have our whole list of webinars scheduled till the end of April. So you can write us down in your calendar, register through the website. So it's been great having you guys tonight. We'll see you again soon. And thank you so much.